So good morning, everybody. I am thrilled to see this group here. Sorry about the sun in your eyes, but let me tell you, this is a pretty spectacular view. Nice backdrop for NSF. For those of you who don't know me, I am Maureen McCarthy. I'm the Director of Programs and Commentary for the National Security Forum. I welcome all of our NSF folks and our MOA partners and National Guard crew who are here. This is a very special time for us to be able to do this program during Veterans Week. And we hope this gives you some insight into the incredible role the National Guard plays, not only serving the nation, but serving Nevada. And we are very honored to have General Waters with us today. But most importantly, what you're going to hear about today is how you can help be part of the veterans community and the National Guard community. So we hope you get a little flavor on that. Today, we are very honored to have Brigadier General Dan Waters joining us, as well as John Hoffman. With that, I'm turning it over to Justin.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Major Justin Cladden. I have the privilege of serving as the director of the Nevada National Guard J9 Warrior Wellness and Support Services Directorate. You might be wondering what the J9 is. I did too when I first came over. It's a joint directorate. Prior to our formation in October 2021, a lot of the programs that we have quite a few programs under us, about 20 different programs, different nonprofits that assisted with us, some contracts, DoD contracts and things like that. They all existed independently. So military family programs, child and youth services, suicide prevention, R3SP, which is risk resiliency reduction and suicide prevention services. Those were all kind of floating by themselves going forward without any unified direction or cohesiveness. And that's what the J9 was able to do. The J9 was created to ensure that every member, veteran and family member within the Nevada Guard has access to the essential programs and support systems that they deserve. Our mission is to enhance their well-being and readiness, ensuring that the Nevada National Guard is prepared to serve our community, state, and nation whenever that need arises. In just a few short years, our dedicated J9 team has achieved some significant milestones, and these are just a few of them. A remarkable 600% increase in our attendance for military family readiness and child and youth programs, which is impressive. Training of over 1,200 personnel through our Purple Resolve program that was assisted with the PTSD Now Foundation, assisting nearly 500 service members, their families, and veterans in securing employment with employers across Nevada and throughout the nation through our Work for Warriors program, supporting over 200 personnel in their transition from military to civilian life. And that's a pretty big deal. Once you hit that 20 years or beyond, it's great to be able to have some support with that. And we'll talk about that a little bit, how Onward Ops can help with us in that regard. We also conducted over 1,000 personal financial counselings through our PFCs that we have to help our service members make informed financial decisions. And most importantly, and I can't highlight this enough, is contributing to a meaningful reduction in harmful behaviors, including suicide and suicidal ideations. These are just a few of the highlights, but none of these accomplishments would have been possible without our unwavering support of our community partners, the nonprofits that we have here, and folks like yourself that are attending this forum right now. So thank you for being here. However, despite these successes, we recognize that there's always room to grow and continue strengthening our foundation. We like to continue improving our foxhole, as a lot of us say. So this is where I believe that the Onward Ops Nevada Guard pilot will assist us and could really be a game changer, amplifying and multiplying the folks that are in need, especially within Nevada. The pilot program would aim to recruit pre-qualified transitioning active duty personnel into the Nevada National Guard and place high caliber candidates into the Nevada workforce. It would also improve retention rates in the Nevada National Guard through enhanced support programs powered by the Onward Ops network. Would maximize civilian career opportunities for current and future Nevada Guardsmen, ensure that Nevada Guardsmen fully understand their benefits and their families as well, both during their service and as they transition into civilian life. And last but not least is strengthen our community engagement and support across Nevada and beyond. I'd like to thank the National Security Forum, the Military Officers Association, and Brigadier General Waters and Mr. Hoffman for having me here today to kind of discuss what happened with the J9 and why we did it. And to all of you here, thank you for your continued support of our military community. Your backing makes all the difference as we strive to enhance the readiness and resilience of our Guardsmen. Thank you so much. This is Brigadier General Waters. He is our Adjutant General. He's doing great things and a superb champion for warrior wellness and the J9 in general. So thank you, sir. The floor is yours.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here today. I am Brigadier General Dan Waters, the 31st Adjutant General of the great state of Nevada. We stand on the shoulders of giants. I am very fortunate to have worked with Major General Andre Berry. Andre Berry, I'm sure as many of you know, former Vice Chief of Police, for the city of Reno, MGM vice president, definitely a community figure, and has really set, frankly, a great mark for the Nevada National Guard to be dedicated and to be part of the communities. I joined the Army in 1985, 3 days after graduating high school. My intent was not to make a life out of it or a career. Fortunately, I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the people, the missions, the dedication to service to community, state, and nation. And it's been a big part of me. And I'm very fortunate then to have moved from the active component and being adopted by the state of Nevada in the mid-90s. And it has been an incredible journey. In the Nevada National Guard, we have 4 focus areas. The first is to take care of our people. It's not only our soldiers and our airmen, the civilians that work for us, but it's also their families and, frankly, the veterans that served in the Nevada National Guard. We are one family. The next thing is to drive readiness. And I specifically use the word drive because it's an active process. We're not passive in our readiness. And when I say readiness, I'm talking about the full spectrum of military operations, all the way from domestic operations to combat operations and everything in between that we have to be ready for. The next thing is to foster and build on a culture of excellence. And this is where I said we stand on the shoulders of giants, the things that we've done in the Nevada National Guard, the things that we continue to be involved in the community. Those are critical pieces. And frankly, I'm going to focus on that third piece here in a minute. And our fourth piece is to foster the profession. And what do I mean by that? It's being involved in events such as this, making sure the community knows what the National Guard brings to the table and the trust that we have built over the years, the trust that you have confided in the Nevada National Guard, that we are good stewards of that, performing our duties as in a domestic operation or protecting the homeland or frankly in homeland defense overall. So I said I was going to talk specifically about that third piece, foster and build on a culture of excellence. So we about 4 years ago, what we thought was, is the Nevada National Guard the organization we said we are? And really what it came down to is the answer was we were a little off target. I don't want to say we weren't the organization, but we knew we had some refinement to do. And that's when specifically we implemented programs like Purple Resolve and our culture drive, or I should say our drive to improve our culture and how we treated each other. Understanding that building that culture, and specifically the culture was moving from one from compliance-based to one that was commitment-based, one that was, I do what I have to because the regulations or I'm being told what I want to do, to one where, no, it's ingrained in me, it's part of my personal values, and service is a part of me and what I bring, the value I bring to, again, the community, state, and nation. Doing that, that cultural shift had to be built on trust. Well, there's 2 primary elements from an organizational standpoint as we built on that trust. And it was a sense of connectedness, which frankly is the number one, or a lack of sense of connectedness is the number one contributor to suicide in the Department of Defense. And then a sense of belonging. And that sense of belonging, the higher it is, the actual more retention we have. So building on those 2 efforts and then having character within our force and the competence within our force to conduct those missions, those are the things that we drive at now. And I would frankly say the things that we're going to accelerate, those career developmental efforts, accelerate over the next several years, focused on our focus areas, and frankly, working with community partners to make sure we have the net, a network of support. The earlier things I talked about, the 4 key elements of the Nevada National Guard, are focus areas. Really what you can think about is almost the warp and woof of a fabric. As fabric is stretched and contracts, it wears. What we have to do is make sure we have the strength across the entire force, across the elements of that fabric, that our people and the organization can be successful, can be resilient, and frankly, go out and do those missions that we need them to do. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, General Waters, and thank you for your service. We're honored to have you here today because we really commend you for the recent change of command. We had General Berry speak to our organization on our anniversary event, and so we're very honored to have you. But we also recognize the integral role that the Guard plays, not only in our national security, but in our communities.
It's definitely a joint force. We are one team. And when you look at the Title 32 force, the Title 10 force, and actually how they're combined and then go forth and do certain things, yeah, a great aspect of the Guard is that dual-hatted role. the dedication to community and state on top of the nation. But I would say the Title 10 force also has that capability whenever we do operations. If we needed those forces to come and actually help, they do actually have that capability. And I apologize for not mentioning it, but I was remiss earlier. One of the things we're talking about specifically, John, I hope I don't steal your thunder, is the transition from the military into civilian life, the transition from the active component into the Guard. And I would say the latter is probably easier because there's still that family network, but the transition, and Justin talked about it, is folks retire and then ultimately get out of military service. And it goes back to those two elements I was talking about, the sense of connectedness and the sense of belonging. Unfortunately, people lose those. Fortunately, when folks transition from the Title 10 force to the Title 32 force, we do have that net and they can maintain that sense of connectedness. And we hold that dear to our hearts to maintain that culture where we are accepting of folks that maybe didn't grow up in Nevada, but still bring that value to Nevada. Two folks are here with me. I've done the transition from the active component, and I know John also did the transition from the active component military into the civilian life. I brought with me today the Chief Warrant Officer of the state, Steve Nielsen. He transitioned from the active component to the National Guard. And the Chief Command Master Sergeant of the Nevada military, the joint side, Cameron Peters. He also from the active component Air Force into the Guard. So we're very fortunate. The net exists, the safety network exists when you're transitioning from Title 10 to Title 32. So thanks for bringing that up. But transitioning from 32 into civilian life or 10 directly into civilian life, that's where some of those risk factors frankly exist. And that's, I think, what some of the issues we're going to highlight here today.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And for those of you who don't know, Nevada is exceedingly unique in the fact that our emergency management organization is joined directly with the Guard and reports up through the Guard. So our Director of Emergency Management reports through you.
He does, Colonel Brett Constance.
And that's really important in Nevada. Kevin and I are both in the emergency management community and have done workshops down in Carson City at the Ops Center there. And the fact that the Guard and the emergency managers are linked hopefully may make that transition easier as people transition out of the Guard and potentially get into emergency management.
Well, that's a great point. You're exactly right. The term for it, the colloquial term within the National Guard, is called a super tag. So tags that have adjutants general that happen to work also with emergency management. We are very fortunate in the state. As I said, Colonel Brett Compton transitioned from the Title 32 force into being the director of the Department of Emergency or Division of Emergency Management. And that is frankly, a natural relationship between the Guard, the domestic operations capabilities that the Guard, the Title 32 force brings to a state or a community, and emergency managers and actually what they do in supporting and responding to emergencies throughout the community.
Thank you very much. John, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm going to ask you to give a short introduction.
I'm going to try to tell more of a story than talk specifically about some of these slides, but there's a lot of statistics that I will give you that I have fact sheets on. Back in 2018, I don't remember if it was a Samsung supplier day in Korea. I think it was. There was about 6 CEOs in Silicon Valley that were all veterans. And after we spent the day getting beat up by Samsung because we were suppliers, we're having a beer somewhere in Itaewon and talking about all the different troubles in the world and, of course, troubles with Samsung. But we were all looked at each other as veterans. And the question we ask each other is, what are we going to do next? What's after leading a company in high tech? We were all high tech people. And we stumbled into this area of veteran support. And the thing that stymied us is that we looked at the money being spent trying to solve suicide, and the dollars were unbelievable. And we looked at the metrics. We're CEOs. That's what general officers. We look at metrics. That's what we do. And the metrics weren't getting better. And so we thought about this and we looked at the businesses that we're running where we might have 200 suppliers. We might have 25,000 active part numbers. And things are changing all the time. Customers are constantly asking for more. How do you know what you can afford to do? And we said, there's got to be a way to integrate this and ultimately leverage the value of all of these assets to get a better result. And so the chairman of Lamb Research, chairman emeritus now Steve Newberry, Naval Academy graduate, a gentleman named John Drew, venture capitalist, West Point guy, I think investor one in Facebook. A gentleman named Joe Fields, West Point graduate, He runs 22 companies, 10 Cate Grass. These are the folks, we had these discussions and dialogues, and we started building a vision. Anytime you start something, it doesn't just start. You got to really plan it out and try to understand it. And we were working with another guy in Washington named Bill Buck. Bill Buck was in the Beltway. You don't start these kind of things, a bunch of Silicon Valley people outside of the Beltway, unless you're Elon Musk, apparently. Those were kind of the thoughts we had. And then the question was, who was going to be the leader of this? And we were very, very lucky in Brigadier General Mike Eastman, ETS'd out of Kandahar during a combat command and came back to run this organization for us. We raised about $8 million pretty much overnight without term sheets. That's pretty significant because that's trust and really commitment to the mission. So given that, we kind of started this process and we had a couple of significant advantages. What we decided was it really comes back to our partnerships. And it turns out that many of the people that I went to school with are 3-star generals or 4-star generals. And 2 months ago, we had, and I will invite the National Security Forum as Jim Clark is here. Jim Clark is the president of MOA, North Lake Tahoe. He's also on the board of PTSD now. He's in the front row scowling at me for talking about him, and his wife, Patty. So what we've done is we're bringing in speakers like Lieutenant General Ken Tovo, who is friends with Dan. Lieutenant General Tovo is 3-star general that runs all of Army Special Operations, 45,000 special operators in 70 countries. Having Lieutenant General Tovo as part of our leadership group, he is on my board for the foundation, is a big deal. It starts to cut through bureaucratic red tape, which is very apparent in the world we live in. Lieutenant General Ed Cardone came out and spoke last month. Lieutenant General Cardone was the founder of Army Cyber. Okay, that's a big deal to start a branch in the Army, right? Another person, Lieutenant General Ken Dahl. The name may be familiar because Ken Dahl was the 3-star that actually was in charge of the Bergdahl investigation, if any of you remember that. He gave his findings and retired immediately because his findings didn't match the political climate he was operating in. That's life in the military. And I think what we've been able to do, leveraging the Army relationships, is we've put Onward Ops, at the time they were called ETS sponsorship contact centers, in many, many of the active Army bases across the country. And in order to get out of the Army, by order of commanding generals, you must out-process through one of our contact centers. So if you've been in the military, you know you all have a sheet of paper. You got to turn in your TA-50 gear. You got to go make sure that your housing is straightened up. And now you got to go through this Onward Ops thing. So Onward Ops then worked with the Veterans Commission and ultimately became 100% approved by the VA at the national level. This is super important because what that means is as these soldiers, sailors, and airmen were out processing, we asked them a number of questions. And those were VA approved questions through their studies with Harvard. And there's about 35 questions on that, of which 6 we call hot questions. They can answer this idea of suicide ideation. And what that means then is the sponsors that we're training for each of these individuals and certifying now know that they probably need to pay special attention to these people as they transition out. So I'm going to go through a few of these statistics because everybody likes statistics. The thing that's interesting is as I sat as a CEO in the Valley, things are far worse than I thought. Right now, the suicide rate for 18 to 34-year-olds basically doubled from 2001 to 2020. That's a VA survey. That's not our data. Think of the dollars being stacked up into that problem, yet the results are not getting the goals that we want. In 2020, the suicide rate in this veterans age group is really 1.5 times the average and 2.5 times the average, 2.6 times for the same non-age military people. Rough number. And then the service members that are transitioning out is nearly 3 times as high during the first year post-discharge as it is for same age sex match service members. It kind of led us into this idea of, we call it the deadly gap. And it's exactly what General Waters spoke of. You have a number of service members that are part of very high performing teams, a strong brotherhood, sisterhood, where the units really and the soldiers take care of themselves, with the non-commissioned officer corps, who's constantly looking at this, trying to make sure that people are taken care of. Families are being taken care of. As a company commander, I could go to any platoon sergeant and ask him how things are going. And I'm thinking about how, is Bradley 221 up and running? Because that was what I was worried about. He's telling me about families. Hey, sir, we got a problem with Spec 4 Jones. There's something going on, blah, blah, blah. Non-commissioned officers are on top of this. So this causes a bit of an issue when you out-process in the active duty Army. As a company commander, I had 24 hours to get off the post. That's the Army. The Army wants commanders in, and when they're gone, because the soldiers need to put their lives behind the new commander. That's probably changed, but it was very difficult in 1988 when I had to, after 2 years with these soldiers, I'm pretty much gone. And so what happens now is, as soldiers are getting out of the military, 16,600 per month are getting out of our active Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Space Force, et cetera. These folks are in a unit and then out of a unit. And if they haven't prepared in advance, they're kind of on their own. It's very difficult. Now, I'm talking about big Army, big Air Force. And I've gone to 23 states having these discussions, but it's with active duty transitions. Nevada is so far ahead of other states, it's amazing. And Debbie and I are new to the state, relatively 2022 for me, 2020 for her. And it's just fascinating how this state stands behind their Guard and veterans. It's something you should be very proud of, because I can tell you when I go to New York State, it's not that way. I won't even bring up California, different discussion altogether. So those are some of the numbers there. And these are pretty much the numbers through the VA. I'll go to the next page. These are our numbers. So we've been running this now for 2 years. And so it's relatively new. This is the demographics of the people getting out of the military across the country, heavily weighted by big Army. Of the 16,000 people getting out each month, about 12,000 is big Army. It's just a big service, and you'd expect that. It gives you a sense of some of the issues. I'll give you an example. Less than 23% of the people getting out of the military monthly actually join the VA. What does that mean? 43% of the people serving use psychotropic drugs. Their unit commanders don't know that. The reason why is because of a military version of HIPAA. You got to protect privacy of the individual and their medical. And in the military, people don't tend to talk about this, because if they do, they could lose flight status. They could lose jump status. If they're in special operations, they could lose a clearance. And so people tend to keep that information personalized. So if they're getting out of the military, and let's say 23% join the VA, of which 43% are on some type of psychotropic drugs, what happens? They're out with no prescriptions. And what are they entering into? The most difficult time of their lives. Major transitions for 23, 24-year-olds. And fortunately, in this state, there's a lot of activity happening to support them. Unfortunately, not too many come to Nevada. And I aim to change that, and I'll explain that as we go along. The other side, I'll just say sad bit of news, is about 24% actually ever leverage their GI benefits or their education credits. And there's so many reasons for that, most of which are anecdotal. But ideally, a lot of people join, they get a job, they show up in their company already has training and credits, and they're pushed right into those in their corporate level training, because they want to be a certified project manager. They want to be a certified warehouse manager. And so they leverage those corporate credits in order to get promotions in their new careers. So that's another issue we found. The numbers that we've been seeing have continued to increase. And part of the reason that we changed the name from ETS sponsorship to Onward Ops is because as our volume started to grow and the active Air Force, Navy, Marines, Coast Guard came on, most of these folks don't know what ETS means. ETS is an Army term, and we started quite Army-centric. And so we changed the name to Onward Ops so that we could begin to bring in these folks from other services. And we've seen that continue to rise. So in 2024, we've gone to about somewhere around 2,500 service members per month processing out through our program. The Army is highly involved in this, and the Navy has been coming with the Marines and the like. On our website, if you go to Onward Ops, you'll see ABC News San Diego has a 2.5 minute special that came out during the daily news programming that features this program. And what they talk about is a program that's actually meaningful and making a difference. And all the testimonials are soldiers, sailors, and airmen. And of course, our sponsors. So I think that's a good one as well for you to, okay, what are these people really up to? This is kind of the background. We can pass through that. I kind of told that as a story as how we started and what we're doing. We were able to change policies so that people getting out of the active military and how they test on the surveys could be assigned a Veterans Administration psychiatrist while on active duty. VA, DOD, crossing boundaries. And if you're a veteran, you know how exciting that is. You can't even get brigades to work together, half the time. So it's hard. And so this is a big deal for us, we think. And what does it do? It really just starts to solve the problem. It's not about boundaries. It's about solving the problem. There's the deadly gap I spoke of with suicide rates assigned to that. I'm going to spend a little time there later when I speak about PTSD, because this is another area where I think the state of Nevada, vision by General Berry, General Waters, so far ahead of other states. That doesn't mean there's not more to do. We're going to talk about that as well. But I can tell you there are people here actually attacking this problem. In Nevada, PTSD now, and they offer something called Purple Resolve training for the guardsmen and the chain of command. And what PTSD now is preventive training, and it talks a little bit about how not to get yourself into these dark places, how to stay ahead of these type of problems, how to alert the chain of command about these types of issues. And then this organization is funding clinical psychiatrists above and beyond the VA for just-in-time service for guardsmen. Think about how proactive that is. This discusses the problem statement, and the problem statement really comes back to the Army loves to talk about a warm handoff. How do you make sure as people are transitioning out, they feel bonded to their new community, and then within that community, they feel part of it as they arrive? I can assure you back in the day, that really wasn't even discussed. It was like, good luck, Captain Hoffman, enjoy your time. I think the battalion commander, when I decided to leave, asked me, do you have a job? And I kind of said, yes. And I said, yeah, it's doing something in semiconductors. And he goes, oh yeah, good luck with that. So it wasn't as if there was a vested interest because you were leaving. And then why are we different? We start 6 to 12 months before soldiers get out. That's different because the active Army, Navy, Marines, and Air Force have a view of retention as a goal. They want to keep people. Why would they want us to talk to people 6 to 12 months before they get out? Because that's almost like facilitating an exit strategy. As we've discussed with our brethren, the officer corps, we're here to help them. If the best decision for them is to stay in, we're going to push that. We're all veterans. We want them actually to stay in and be successful. By the same token, though, if you're going to get out, can we resolve the problems we know are coming in advance, proactively by individual? This is where it's a little different because a warm handoff is an interesting topic, but it's an individual outcome. What I need isn't the same thing as Specialist 5 Jones, who's a 63 Bravo wheel vehicle mechanic. He has just different goals and he has probably different family plans. All of those things need to be in consideration. That's kind of the thing that I think is a big deal. If you don't want a sponsor, it's optional. We found you get better results with a sponsor, but by the same token, if they don't want, we're not going to force anything on folks. What tends to happen, we see with our data, is as they get closer to getting out, they start to think they need a sponsor. And the other little problem is most don't really know where they're going. They may have a job. They may not have a job. They do have aspirations. Those aspirations are blended with their family, whether it's a husband or a wife, and then children. And where this deadly gap gets very dangerous is when those aspirations aren't aligned before they get out. And then we have a problem with a relationship that could begin to falter. You're a new soldier, veteran, in the community, your spouse isn't pleased. The job you thought you were going to get went away. You thought you had plenty of money, $5,000 saved, which is a lot of money for a 25-year-old kid on military pay. And they've got to make their first month's rent with the deposit. Now things start getting dicey. And the car didn't quite make it when you drove from Fort Bliss, Texas to Phoenix. Now you've got maintenance bills. So you can see prior to what we were doing, that safety net wasn't quite there. And what do they get? They show up in a community, whether it's New York State, California, Georgia, and we have the demographics, where there's lots of state programs. There's lots of federal programs, but you're 24 years old. How do you figure out what's relevant for you? How do you get service when you need it? Hence this view of an integrated network of support back in 2018 starts to pay dividends. It starts to lead to success. The other couple of big wins we had is Google is a partner. And it doesn't really matter if you like Google or not. I like Google because they're very veteran friendly. They have an organization inside Google called VetNet. There's about 4,500 veterans inside Google. So we were able to get things like Google Workspace for every one of these transitioning service members and their sponsors before they get out. Why is that important? You can put your DD-214 on it. You can export your medical records. You can then begin to build your skills as to what you want. Now, secret sauce, Google has AI. We've taken every military job, 63 Bravo, wheel vehicle mechanic, 11 Bravo, infantry officer. We don't have a whole lot of skills. I don't, you do. So the thought there was, if you're in any of these military positions, you're a maintenance technician in the Air Force, you're a maintenance technician in the Navy, different skills, different jobs. Google scrapes all that. We have those now coded. So whatever your MOS is, we know what you do. Google then scrapes every open job position in the United States with AI. So now you come back and you're meeting your sponsor in Fort Bliss and you're a wheel vehicle mechanic, as an example. And they say, well, what do you want to do? I don't really know. I don't know what I'm qualified for. Well, let's look at what your skills actually by MOS are. Have you thought about going to work for Penske Trucking out of Texas? They've got a fleet of vehicles, Rodger Penske, very veteran friendly. And here's the starting salaries. Oh, by the way, if you get certified in this, this, and this, starting salary could go from 47,000 to 50 because you're pre-certified. The CEO of these companies, actually director level, manager levels, what do they want? They want to close the gap for a new hire for time to money. How quickly can you get to work so that you can solve my problems? And so if we're bringing in these folks and now we pre-certify them, we get agreements with these corporations that their salary gets bumped up on day one. So now what's the motivation? If I'm in the Army 7 months, 8 months till I get out, I start going to school at night. I'm using my GI benefits and I'm leveraging those towards my future. And it's a future that's based on my goals as opposed to any specific recruiter I happen to be talking to. Corporations like this, typical new hire costs are around $7,000 for acquisition. We can do this for about $3,000 because there's services involved, none of which go to the veteran or the transitioning service member. It's all back to the corporation. The corporation saves money. The service member is now embarked on a new career as opposed to a job. And ultimately, their sponsor helps guide them through that. And this is kind of the demographic. Who are the folks getting out? Now, remember, as I said, we were very focused on big Army, big Navy, big Air Force, big Marines, because that's the crux of the 16,000 service members a month that we have to go solve for us, because that's the large demographic. There's 15 million veterans out there. We'll get to that, but we can't deal with it right now, but I am going to ask for your help later on how we can do more. One of the things you'll notice is, where are these people going as they get out of the service? And unfortunately, Nevada is not one of those states. So one of the things that General Wooders and I and Major Klatt have spoken about is how we build a tab on our dashboards across the country. So everybody that's getting out looks at a tab that says, have you considered Nevada? And so if I'm in the lithium industry, engineering, the renewables energy, all of the things that are happening in the state, even the gaming industry, of course, there's management opportunities, et cetera. If we do this right, we can attract talent into this state. And this is high-level experienced talent. I have had this discussion with Governor Lombardo, and there's a lot of interest in this. There's 1,600 open jobs in the Nevada government that they're recruiting for. And guess what? They want to hire vets. I believe that if we do this well, we'll be able to bring extraordinary talent to a state that I know takes care of them. I'll give you another example in New York State. New York State puts almost 15,000 people a year into the active duty, recruiting, joining. Remember, we got to get in 16,000 a month. Well, they do about 15,000 a year. The problem is in New York State, only 1,200 come back to New York. You could argue tax policy. You could argue any number of things. It's a brain drain. They're hemorrhaging talent. So if you look at some of our community integration coordinators, New York is heavily represented. SUNY New York and Albany, heavily trying to service that. We believe that while Nevada isn't putting in 15,000 a month, there's probably 500 to 600 a month that could come here if we do this well. These are some of the advancements that we've had. I'll add one other little program at the bottom. We find that about 10% of the people transitioning need help with food. And so we generally give them $300 a month for about 3 months. Food insecurity may not be the reason someone might have suicide ideation, but what we find is it's stacking. It's 2 or 3 problems that happen at once to a young person, and ultimately there's a ton of pressure and no way out. In their mind, there is a way out. Of course, there's a way out. This is just a quick look at Google. Good fact sheet to have. We are partnered with Army Soldier for Life. We are partnered with the Veterans Administration. This is a quick look at the community integration coordinators we have across the country right now. So what you'll find there is that we're heavily weighted towards the states veterans are going to. We want to integrate the support services in those states and ultimately be there when folks arrive in station and ultimately be part of it. And that's a definition. We can keep rolling there. There's a checklist, and I'll talk a little bit about that. What is a sponsor? One note is that the head of the VA suicide prevention in the United States, the number one guy, is Lieutenant Colonel named Joe Geraci. Joe Geraci is an infantry lieutenant colonel, battalion commander, several combat deployments, got out, got 2 or 3 PhDs. He works in Bronx, New York at the VA hospital, and he's in charge of reducing the number. He's our biggest advocate. So when Jim Clark and I had a discussion last spring, and we decided we wanted to get the MOA group in Incline Village certified as sponsored, we had about 20 folks that showed up and became certified sponsored. Joe Geraci was so excited, he flew out here personally and did the training. If the National Security Forum, Montreux, get some interest in this, TMCC, we have the right resources at the national level to fly in and conduct this type of training for people. Sponsors are critical. When I talk about the Nevada pilot that we're going to try to kick off, we're going to need really good sponsors. And this is one of those groups that I'll be probably talking to and answering questions. That's the demographics of the sponsors. You don't have to be ex-military. In fact, it depends on what the person that's getting out wants to do. For example, if you're an attorney and they're a JAG officer, they may want to talk to an attorney. If you're a bulldozer operator in an engineer battalion and you're thinking about going to Caterpillar, good company, you don't really need a military person. You want to learn what does civilians and what does those engineers do? So there's opportunities there for all. I gave you kind of the list of what they're looking for support. That's the kind of the journey of a sponsor. You're usually going to get 1 or 2 calls a month as a sponsor. And remember, you're going to have free Google Workspace, so you can Zoom with them wherever they happen to be in the world. It's secure. And so if they're in Iraq, you can still have a Zoom call. And then these are some of the training dates there. I want to now talk a little bit about the Guard pilot because that's super germane. So about 8 months ago, General Waters and I and General Barry and Craig Rochelle and Jim Clark had lunch over in Carson. And I went back to the board of directors of ETS and said, when are we going to start trying to help the Guard? And the board chastised me, as always, about cost money to do this, John. Where are you going to get the money? And I'm constantly raising money. Believe me, as a private company CEO that went public, money is what we have to do. But in this case, those Google dashboards cost us $1 a day per person. So about $400 per service member. And then you got to throw for every 3 service members, we pretty much need a sponsor. That's kind of the quandary for us is how quickly can we raise money and get qualified sponsors in a time that allows effective transitions. By this time next year, we'll be doing 5,000 transitions per month out of 16,000. There's big opportunities there. We're constrained by dollars. One of the things that came to us very quickly is in this state, it doesn't take the type of jump start we're seeing in other states. So Felipe Gutierrez is here. Please stand up. Felipe is an ex-Marine and Alex is with him, number 2. They run the Veterans Center. If you haven't been to TMCC, you should go. The Veterans Center there, top tier. And it just warms my heart, what they're doing for service members and this community. And it just makes it easy for us. We have an organization that we know when we start turning over sponsors and transitioning veterans, they're going to get taken care of. PTSD now already on the ground, already partnered here with the Nevada Guard, making a difference already. What we decided is that we would take on our first National Guard pilot as a national organization, and it's with your National Guard.
Real quick, John, you mind if I add a couple points, sir? So when we specifically start transitioning and talking about the National Guard and Onward Ops and the things we'd like to do, again, that network of support. John talked about it, the soldier and airman for life. What we've done in the Nevada National Guard is taken on that responsibility from the point where somebody raises their right hand and swears allegiance to the Constitution to the point where they're delivered final rights in their life, that we have a responsibility to support them throughout that cycle. That's a big responsibility. It's not necessarily funded 100% within the Department of Defense. One of the things is we talk about an active component of Title 10 soldier versus a Title 32 soldier or airman, Marine, whatever that may be. That network for support exists on an active duty base. One of the things that was assumed away for a Title 32 force was, the community would absorb that capability. They're going to have medical insurance and they'll go be able to get behavioral health. That was one of those unrealistic expectations, frankly, that we had to overcome within the Guard. And frankly, the community of Nevada, John talked about it. We are very fortunate. It is not the exact same supporting the military in other states as we do in Nevada. I'd say we don't get that same level. They don't get rather the same level of congressional support, state support from the governor. So it is basically from the top of the federal system all the way down to the local community that we are very fortunate in the state of Nevada. PTSD now helped us fund extra behavioral health specialists. Now, obviously, as the Department of Defense, I can't take donations, but the state of Nevada can. So working through the Department of Veterans Services in the state, we were actually able to seek funding with PTSD now, the entire board, get those behavioral health specialists. So not only do we now have federal behavioral health specialists, we have state behavioral health specialists through Governor Lombardo's effort. Now we also have civilian or private practice behavioral health specialists trying to create that additional network of support. Purple Resolve. That is our effort within the Nevada National Guard to establish that culture of collective resilience. What we've had previously and trying to get to the left of any emergency is what we're trying to do, trying to get before, trying to be proactive, if you would. Previously, resiliency was all about the individual. What we've done in the Nevada National Guard and Purple Resolve and our J9 programs, and frankly, with our community partners, PTSD Now, Onward Ops, is we're making it a collective resiliency effort, not only within the service, but I'm looking at you, frankly, within the community. We are all responsible for each other. We are responsible not only for ourselves, but for the National Guard, for the entire state. And when I get down to sheer numbers, the 16,000 of Army only coming out of the active component. Per year, the Nevada National Guard produces 350 Army veterans and approximately 100 Air veterans. We're very fortunate. Our retention rate in the Nevada National Guard is incredibly strong. I'm well below the national average, but there's still 10% of people that are coming out of the service, losing that sense of connectedness, potentially losing that sense of belongingness. And then we talk about that network being available to help them transition. It's massive. It's a huge effort, and it really speaks to the dedication of Nevada and citizens like yourselves of what we actually stand for as a state.
Using those same numbers, our thought is we're going to have 450 people per year transitioning out in, it's kind of an interesting thing, with the Nevada Guard. And we're going to need to probably have food insecurity funding for probably 10%. From a standpoint of money that I need to raise to kick off. So you're talking about $250,000 all in per year. We're partnered with USAA Fit to Fight. We're partnered with Google Benevity. We're partnered with Pentagon Federal Credit Union. What's fun for us is that once we start sharing our metrics, and the metric is we're now at 18,800 transitions with 0 suicides. But what we've learned is that's the low bar. I think veterans are a huge value to this country. I think they're willing to serve this nation. They're your baseball coaches. They're your high school principals. They're the people running organizations like MOA, NSF. These are people we want in our community. There's a number of organizations, 55,000 tax deductible veterans-based charities. That's a lot of overhead, in my humble opinion. I can tell you this, we have no overhead. Everyone that works here in our foundation, the generals, as well as the civilian CEOs, there's no salary. Actually, we're investors. We're the one putting money in. We have no plans for overhead. Our plan is to move as much money to the troops as we possibly can through valued services. That's the type of arrangement where we build this network with firm supporters. And I think in this state, if we can stand this up and get the kind of metrics we believe that can be had, it's going to be a situation where we'll bring that to the governor's office with those metrics and say, why can't we move funding from programs over here that may not be giving you those results into programs that do give you those results? And so one of the things that I've worked with Justin on, as well as General Waters, is where's the white space? This is a very successful Guard organization. This is a very successful state with veteran support. Where can we work with you and provide those services that we're not getting, that we need? And we want to track metrics that are meaningful to our Guard so that when we go back and say, hey, the state should actually help us, we can prove it with data. So that's kind of the intent here today. And we do need your help. But I think it's a situation where you don't have an organization that's out wandering around talking about victims. You've got an organization working with an organization here that's delivering great results, and we want to continue that. And so we're looking for people to join our leadership council for this state. And we're looking for corporate and individual donors in order to find this money so we can kick this off. So I apologize. It's a little bit of a long story, but I've learned that if I skip parts, that's where all the questions are. And I'd hope to not do that.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Johns. You heard it here first. This is the first partnership with the Guard, with Onward Ops, working with people that we know in our community. So this is a great opportunity for people to get involved, but also to spread the word. One of the things that you mentioned is, how do we get people who are transitioning out from other areas to consider coming to Nevada?
I'll speak from the Guard point. Transitioning, there are actually AC to RC recruiters, active component to reserve component recruiters that are on active component basis. So as those 16,000 soldiers are getting out, as those 10,000 for the Air Force writ large across the enterprise for the Department of the Air Force, the Marine Corps, a little bit smaller, the Navy is probably around the Air Force numbers also, the 10,000. So there's actually recruiters that help them transition and look for jobs. We in Nevada specifically, we have a program within the Nevada National Guard, within the J9 shop, the Work for Warriors program. So as those folks are coming out, those veterans that bring those skills, frankly, the ability to learn as a team, the ability to perform on a team, follow direction, give direction, those types of things, we make sure that they actually have productive jobs within the state of Nevada working through our Work for Warriors program. Jay and his team do a fantastic job. So there is a network out there. That said, John's exactly right. I think your average middle-aged 20-year-old, 25-year-old coming out of the service, they wanted to serve, and God bless them for doing that. They don't necessarily have a solid plan for that transition. I'm going to go back home. I'm going to go back to my neighborhood where I lived. I'm going to find a job. There's great jobs out on American Parkway. There's great jobs down in Las Vegas. How they actually make that connection, that's the critical piece right there that we need to fill in, that gap that is essential for making sure they're productive Nevadans.
I'm planning to have a video running, and it's going to be, have you considered Nevada? And as part of that, then the question is, how do we market this for these young people? Because I think there's real preferences that, you know, the Guard will say, hey, I really need missile technicians. I really need drone operators. I don't know. I think those are real. That's probably real. Well, those folks actually exist today. They may be in Connecticut at a naval base, and they probably haven't considered Nevada. So part one is you got to get them thinking about it. And then part two is, what are the services or benefits of coming to the state? So now I go back to TMCC, which is going to be our community integration coordinator for Onward Ops. They already have these type of things already running. And the question is, what do we add to it? And do we go to Caleb Cage? Many of you probably know Caleb. If you don't, he's kind of in charge of the renewables energy for the state. Caleb wants people. He needs people. So now we got to weave this all together. And you can see, before you know it, Onward Ops is kind of the glue that now takes these programs, all these benefits nationally, and then brings them down locally where people can take advantage of it. And ultimately, maybe there's low cost mortgages. There's a lot of things states will do to attract this talent. We've got work to do there. That's okay. We'll get there. I think the state stands on its own pretty well so far. But the real thing is education to people, and then attracting the talent that our Guard needs. They're the only guard pilot, first choice. You draft in the first round, number one
Right.
pick every day.
There's first mover advantage, definitely.
So that's our goal.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I have a few questions for you, sir, at the end. Are the recruitment numbers, you talked about 16,000 leaving active military a month. Are your recruitment numbers keeping up with that pace?
Now, I can speak. I think most folks know the Army and the Air Force both announced the Army did meet its numbers last year. I think the Air Force fell a little bit short, if I'm not mistaken. The Marines, I don't think ever have a problem with recruiting. Their issue is retention. And then the Navy, I believe, met its mark or close thereof. Speaking specifically for the Nevada National Guard, and I think, again, it goes back to the community we have, the connections we have with the community, that is the National Guard, with the community writ large. I've never had an issue with recruiting or retention. My recruiting numbers actually carry over from one year to the next because I reach a top limit. Matter of fact, Nevada has been given additional responsibility to recruit higher than what we actually have to make up for other states' shortfalls. That way, when you look at a national number, for example, you'd say, wow, nationally, the National Guard is meeting its goals. That's because states such as Nevada can overdrive and cover some states that frankly may fall a little short for that particular year. So it is an entire network. So for the Army and the Air, and I'll be frank with you, the Army, I don't have an issue. The Air, I'm beating people off with a stick. The Air Guard does an incredible job recruiting.
Fantastic. Very glad to hear that. Justin, a couple questions for you. First and foremost, do you collaborate with an organization called hireheroes.org in your placement activities?
So as of right now, no, we're not working with Hired Heroes, correct? Is that what we're talking
Yeah.
about? Okay. No, but I have heard of Hired Heroes, and we're always on the lookout to continue building our community partner relationships, especially with the nonprofits. We'd be silly not to accept any assistance from that, which is specifically why we're working with John here, because it's you. It's the community at large that's helping us out. So I'll definitely take a look at that and make sure that we're there. And if anybody has any contact with them and they want to get in touch with me, let me know and we can facilitate that.
Excellent. And while you're there, on the suicide rate, or any of you who can answer that, is there a substantial difference in male versus female suicide rates?
I can definitely discuss that. Typically, the male population is at a much higher propensity for suicide and suicidal ideations. We also have more males within the military service. So some of that actually translates. However, it's not concurrent with what our percentages are that we actually have within the military.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, John, a few questions for you. Is the Honor Foundation connected to your organization?
Not yet. It's something, of course, we're always looking for good partners. I will take an action to go back and figure out how we could potentially work with them.
Couple more questions. What do you mean by sponsor? So can you define sponsor? And then what does the curriculum actually look like that somebody is going through your program is experiencing from those as they're going through the separation? What is it they're actually physically getting involved in?
What they tend to be is, in lay terms that we're probably used to, as a mentor. If you've mentored young folks in the past, you're doing similar things. And generally, the transitioning service member kind of gets to decide, hey, I like this individual as a sponsor. And they're looking at shared experiences or potentially where they'd like to go, like where they want to be. It's very fascinating because when you think you know what a sponsor should be, soldiers surprise you. What's super exciting about TMCC is they have a number of students there that are already mentoring veterans. It didn't really dawn on us when we initially started this. And then one of the early units we adopted was special ops. The rate of all of these bad outcomes is much higher in the special ops community because the deployments for the last 20 years are non-stop. Our sponsor training has been automated. You can do it online. But if we get 30 people that are interested, we want to do it at TMCC, I'll bring out the leading doctor for suicide prevention in the country, also a veteran, and you'll get to meet them. And I'll invite all of the key people so that they can be there, including PTSD Now, and we'll do it all together.
So I'm just going to close with asking any of you for some final thoughts. I am very grateful for all of your service, in your service, but also for our community. Thank you very much. So General Waters, any parting word?
Thank you for your dedicated support to the Nevada National Guard. As I go around the entire state, south, south, north, east, west, and interact with our soldiers, airmen, and civilians, and families and veterans. They feel the support, the love that you provide as a state. So I can never say thank you enough for everything that you do. Thank you for thanking them. They may act bashful and shy. They don't necessarily serve to get a thank you, but that means a lot. So thank you for everything you do. Thanks for what you do for our state. I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me here today.
Absolutely.
I'm going to echo General Waters' comments. We really couldn't do without you. I've been in the J9 now for a little over a year, been 18 years in the service. And I could tell you for a fact, I mean, we talked about the spouses and the community and everybody taking care of people. I was with a gentleman one time, retired Navy doc. He was chatting with a gentleman that was ETSing, and he was a little nervous about what he was going to do. And he said, you know, when I look at any corporation that I've been in since, and he very, very well off, he did very well for himself after he got out of Vietnam. He said, anytime I've been around a large organization that needed somebody or needed a decision to be made or something to happen, they turn to that veteran that works there. That's stuck with me forever. It's going to continue to stick with me in what we do and how we take care of our soldiers now. I appreciate, you know, John and the Onward Ops Foundation and the Military Officers Association of America and, you know, the National Security Forum, everybody that's here. You are creating that, and you're creating a future, better future for us, for my children, and for everybody that works under us at this point in time. So thank you so much.
First, thanks everybody for being here. A big thank you to Maureen, Jim Clark, NSF and MOA for sponsoring the event. Thank all of you for being here. And as I learned, when you are given many gifts, more is asked from you. So I hope we've given you a good overview of what we're trying to accomplish. We need your help. But the other thing is the folks you have running your guard are the most professional people I've dealt with in quite a while. You should be very proud of the military leadership you have in this state. Obviously, General Berry set a heck of a role model for folks. General Waters, Major Klatt, others, fantastic. What's going on at TMCC is world class from all the states I go in. So you should be proud of that. You should get to know it and try to help if you can. And again, thank you very much for all you do for this community.
And thank you, Kevin, for hosting us in this gorgeous location. Stay tuned. We look forward to seeing everybody at our next event. Take care.